Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Council for Strategic Affairs monthly distinguished lecture. My name is Dr. Adityanji, and I'm the president of the Council for Strategic Affairs. Right now, you see the logo of the Council for Strategic Affairs, and those of you who registered using our flyer probably saw this flyer. Today is Saturday, June 27th, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in US and 7:30 p.m. in New Delhi. Our distinguished speaker today is Professor Srikanth Kondapalli, and he will be talking about West Asia War and China's geopolitical maneuvering. That tells you the whole world is on fire. And that started from this part of the world, which is called West Asia. Before we go on to the speaker and the topic, a little introduction about Council for Strategic Affairs. We impart education in the field of international relations. Council fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. We encourage strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. CSA condemns terrorism in all its forms worldwide. Council aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. We do promote people-to-people contacts and track to diplomacy. We encourage you to subscribe, like, and share our YouTube channel. CSA is registered as a 501c3 organization with the Internal Revenue Service in the United States. Our US-based audience, the request is to donate and support the CSA. The link is being given. We have a monthly roundtable discussion that happens on second Saturday of each month, and a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert on fourth Saturday of each month, just like we are having right now. We have a fellowship training program for college students in strategic studies. Currently, we have 2 fellows, Shubhi Malhotra and Rohit K.A. Again, the request is to subscribe, like, and share the CSA YouTube channel. Our US-based audience, kindly support and donate to CSA as we are registered as a non-profit with IRS. And of course, you are seeing our distinguished speaker today. That's his picture. He has an illustrious bio sketch and resume. He is a distinguished Indian scholar specializing in China-related security policies, strategic affairs, and Indo-China relations. Currently, he serves as Dean of School of International Studies at prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University, where he has served as professor at Center for East Asia Studies since 2008. He has extensive research experience at Manohar Parrikar IDSA. He is widely recognized for his contribution to Asian security, China studies, and IR. He has authored numerous influential publications on China's military, diplomacy, and regional strategy. He has been a guest faculty at the National Defence College, College of Naval Warfare, Army War College, Indo-Tibetan Border Police Academy, and Border Security Force. He learned Chinese language, actually Mandarin, at Beijing Language and Culture University. He did a doctoral visiting fellowship at People's University in Beijing from 1996 to 1998. He has visiting professor status at a number of universities in China. Actually, you can refer to his bio sketch at JNU's website. He was a visiting fellow at China Institute of Contemporary International Relations in 2007. He is a non-resident senior fellow at People's University Beijing since 2014. And I'm very proud to say that he has appeared on the CSA platform several times in the past. So he is known to us and we welcome him every time. So topic for today's lecture is West Asia War and China's geopolitical maneuvering. Despite the ceasefire and the 14-point memorandum of understanding signed between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran, as all of us know, tensions are still persisting. There are breaches of the ceasefire and statements from both the sides. United States, led by President Trump, has claimed multiple times that it has won the war. Actually, the debate in United States has degenerated to party line Democrat versus Republican, and nobody is thinking deep what's happening. Islamic Republic claims that it has won the war. Looks like Russia has been the ultimate beneficiary of this war because of rise in the oil prices. And some analysts have opined that China is the ultimate winner. So we go back again to West Asia. This is the map of the West Asia to contextualize. And this is the map of China and its occupied territories. And this is the person who is calling the strings and moving the chess pieces. And ultimately, it leads to this kind of situation. So before I hand over the platform to Professor Kondapalli, some housekeeping rules. I request everyone to stay muted to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone setting to vibration mode. Please do not interrupt our esteemed speaker. Only those members of the audience who identify themselves will be allowed to ask questions at the end of the lecture. All the questions are moderated through the chat room. Please send your questions, be very precise. Don't write lengthy comments or a lecture. We are not expecting that from you. We are recording this event. It's being live streamed on our YouTube channel simultaneously. It will be available as an educational resource on our website also. And again, please like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel. And our US-based audience, we again request you with folded hands to support us financially to help us keep this kind of programs active and running. So without further ado, it's my great honor and pleasure to invite a distinguished scholar of China studies on the CSA platform, Professor Srikanth Kondapalli. Sir, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adityanji and the Council for Strategic Efforts for your kind invite. I also want to greet the participants for coming to this event and would recommend the participants to support the Council on Strategic Affairs through intellectual as well as other support. Thank you very much. And good morning to those who are in the United States and good afternoon to those who are elsewhere in India and other places. So the topic today is on the West Asian war and the Chinese geopolitical maneuvering. So in terms of the West Asian war, we saw last week or on the 19th June, there was an MOU and some twists and turns in terms of the US Vice President J.D. Vance was unable to meet the Iranian delegation. But nevertheless, there is a certain understanding, a 14-point understanding between the two. And even before the understanding can come into the picture, there is already violence still inflicted. So a few generalities before we go into China's efforts to outmaneuver the situation here. I would say that the 14-point draft has the unfreezing of assets of nearly $24 billion. There is end of naval blockade and Strait of Hormuz to be opened up. And Iran, most substantially, Iran should not develop nuclear weapons. That is one understanding. And $300 billion is committed by the United States in reconstruction efforts. So we do not know whether these are going to be implemented given the volatile nature of the West Asian conflict. There are so many intertwined things that are connected in this war. And so we are not very sure about the what is at the end of the tunnel. But it appears that there is some preliminary understanding, um, um, not an agreement, not a treaty, but an understanding. And then we also saw some eruption of violence. So what is the status of the war in West Asia first? We have seen, due to the active conflict, the strikes since February 28th and 100 odd days of the conflict resulted in all-round destruction in the West Asian region, not just Iran, but the entire West Asian region. We have seen as a result the bombings in Iran. There are also Iran's bombing of Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Abu Dhabi, and a host of other countries in West Asia. So it is indeed the whole of West Asia which is under conflagration. So that is number one. Number two, there is humanitarian disaster with an estimated 3.5 million people in Iran displaced and hardships being faced by these millions of people in Iran and elsewhere in the West Asian region. So that is a second dimension of this war in West Asia, humanitarian disaster. And we also saw reports of clean water availability also as a problematic, which means that we are going to witness more hardships for the local people. The second major consequence of the West Asian war is the regional security issues have become much more animated. And this has now spread to the whole region. So we see a reconfiguration of alliances. For example, when President Trump visited Saudi Arabia and other last year, there were a lot of agreements. But today, the many West Asian military allies are unwilling to put their eggs in the American basket, given the United States response during the conflict. So there are these reconfiguration of the alliances due to the conflict. UAE, Saudi Arabia have some doubts regarding the ability of the United States to protect them. And so there is a possibility for this. The second most important aspect of regional security, given the West Asian energy factor, that is, West Asia is said to be having the second largest resources on Earth of energy, proven energy resources after Venezuela. After Venezuela, it is Saudi Arabia, and then Iran. These three are the largest sources of energy resources for the rest of the world, including crude oil and also gas, which is now mainly from Qatar, UAE, and other countries. So in other words, the energy security issue has come to the fore. Many countries have seen restrictions on the use of energy, or the price rise has become key factor. In energy security, we generally tend to highlight two issues: sustainable supplies and affordability. Sustainable in the sense of the pipelines, VLCCs, or others, and affordability in terms of the price of the oil, because it pinches the GDP of every other country which is importing these oil resources. So a third dimension has been added in recent times, which is the environmental fallout. So affordability, sustainability, and environmental issues. Because of the kind of emissions the crude oil burning results in. So in other words, the environmental issues are also part of the security now, redefined security. So on the issue of sustainability, given the Strait of Hormuz being shut down and $600 billion worth of oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, oil and gas. And so there is a huge impact in relation to the sustainability of energy. Second is affordability. Prior to February 28, the oil prices were around $87, $88 per barrel. Now it's nearly $100 per barrel, getting reduced, of course, soon after the MOU was announced. It came down to roughly 89, 90. But there was speculation during the 100-day odd war that it will raise to about $122 per barrel. So if you recall, during the global financial crisis, it hit $145 per barrel. Now it's less than $100 per barrel. So still problematic for countries which are importing substantial energy resources. United States used to be the largest importer before, but after the shale gas revolution, United States is one of the largest exporters of energy resources. Um, Today, China is the largest importer of energy, and that's where China factor can be easily discernible. Second is Japan. Third is India. And India spends about $180 billion of energy bill. And so it affects the Indian economic growth rates, as with the Japanese economic growth rates and the Chinese economic growth rate. So energy as part of the regional security is quite evident from this issue. There is also the global order that is impacted due to the war. We saw the Israel-US strikes and the Iranian strikes that created a certain kind of equilibrium leading to the MOU and other confabulations between Qatar, Pakistan, China, and other countries, including Oman, just before February 28th. They did announce some kind of an understanding. So the global order is changing, and we used to call unipolar moment. The fact that the Geneva meeting and other discussions, the United States has actively participated in, indicate that we are entering into a multipolar world order. And it is still not clear which way it is leading. And so we need to hold on to a final conclusion in terms of the global order changing. But definitely there is a trend because of the visits that we saw of the US Vice President and other leaders in recent times. There is also the IMF, International Monetary Fund, suggesting that this year the economic growth rates will be reduced to 2.3%. So this is going to affect the entire globe, and weaker economies are going to suffer more because of the fuel, food, fertilizer problems that the West Asian war, actually not just the West Asian war, but also the Russia-Ukraine conflict have created that, and we have not been able to recover in these three: fuel, fertilizer, and the food aspects. So that is the general comment on the West Asian war and its impact on the globe. Now I want to go to the Chinese maneuvering, which is my main focus today. And so I would like to start by suggesting that China's basic intention is to maintain growth rates. The growth rates have fallen from 10% to an, an expected 4.5%. The 15th five-year plan outline suggested 4.5 to 5%, but it looks quite hard to realize the growth rates of 4.5 to 5%, given the West Asian conflict and other developments. So that is one of the main Chinese considerations here. Second main consideration is uh, China has a $400 billion trade with West Asia, and the trade with Iran is just about $13 billion. So China has to juggle between these two, Tehran and other capitals of West Asia. And so if China has to maintain growth rates, it has to expand $400 billion of trade rather than contract this trade figure. However, uh, what we came to know about is that the Chinese have surreptitiously supplied arms to Iran, and these came in dual use fashion, or spare parts or legacy equipment. The legacy equipment include the C-801 cruise missiles, and there are others like the CM-302, which was denied, but the variants of these were reflected in the West Asian conflict. There are also the efforts made by Iran to procure sodium perchlorate, which is used in ballistic missile as solid propellants. As you all know, thousands of these missiles have been launched by Iran, hitting Saudi Arabia, UAE, and other countries in West Asia. Now, China needs to explain to the West Asian region how Chinese origin or Chinese uh, uh, legacy equipment to Iran have damaged the West Asian security. So the special envoy of China for Middle Eastern affairs had gone to Saudi Arabia and UAE in order to address the concerns of these countries in relation to the Iran conflict. So we have to see the responses of the West Asian countries in regard to the damage done in the West Asian due to the Iranian kind of retaliation. So China had also, it is speculated, supplied the DF-15, which is a maneuverable re-entry vehicle. And these are hovering around 40 kilometers in the space. And we did see the damage done by these in the West Asian theater. So it is not clear what exactly is the DF-15 variant, but the Iranian missiles have resemblances with the DF-15. So that is one aspect which the Chinese have to explain to the West Asian countries. Not much has been highlighted in this regard. China has been obfuscating this kind of dual use facilities and dual use items supplied to Iran, and trying to suggest that these are not Chinese supplied, or these are supplied before the war began. So it indicates that China has been preparing extensively even before the war. I think that is I wanted to highlight here that China has been preparing for this war even before the war began on February 28 this year. There is a 350 to $400 billion cooperation with Iran signed in 2022, 4 years before this conflict. So we need to keep those in mind. China had also reportedly supplied the manpads shoulder fight and other for countering short-range targets. There is also the Peito 03 navigational satellite supplies, and TE-01B, which is a um, uh, in space itself, they transfer these to another country in terms of the services provided. And Iranian targets have been very accurately hit, and it indicated to an outside support. And this points to China, given the Chinese preparations in regard to the space program since the Gulf War of 19 uh, 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 the earlier Gulf War I, Gulf War II. Chinese have mobilized satellite substantially and provided GPS to these countries in the initial phases. So the TE-01B services to Iran has been very crucial in countering the United States and Israel. And so today there is the huge divide, despite President Trump meeting with President Xi Jinping last month in Beijing, and the agreements that were arrived at between the two sides during this China summit meeting between the United States and China. Um, there is also the naval exercises, and many analysts do not mention this. A few days before the February 28th strikes, China conducted a naval exercise along with Pakistan, Russia, South Africa, and other countries. And in the midst of the conflict, somewhere in March, once again, Pakistan and China conducted Sea Guardian exercises. These are mainly to monitor the situation. And so these exercises lasted from March 25th to April 1st, and suggest that the Chinese were doing real-time monitoring and also possibly providing support to countries which are involved in the conflict. So this is one aspect which China needs to explain to the West Asian countries, which are also damaged due to the conflict. Primary concern of China is obviously energy. I mentioned before that China is the largest importer of energy resources. So China had something like 200 million tons of oil produced domestically through Tarim Basin in Xinjiang, through Taching oil field, and through other drilling operations in South China Sea. However, China requires something like 700 to 800 million tons a year. So the rest of 540 million tons is imported. Out of this, nearly 50 to 60% is imported from West Asia, and mainly from Saudi Arabia and Iran. So since Iran has been sanctioned due to the enriched uranium issue and the IAEA restrictions and the sanctions, the sanctioned oil has been going to China. 93% of Iran's oil is destined to China in the last several years, and this has not stopped during the conflict. Now, what China did was to get Malaysian or other intermediaries to supply. Generally, this is called Malaysian oil, but it is actually Iranian oil which is sanctioned, and these are supplied to teapot refineries, because if a big state-owned enterprise is involved, they attract sanctions due to the United Nations security resolutions or the United States sanctions. Hence, China resorted to teapot refineries. These are small and flexible, and they would import the Iranian oil. So, in other words, this is the modus operandi of China in order to escape the sanctions. So, in other words, China has overcome the sanctions, but also played around the United Nations Security Council sanctions, which itself is a member, and proposed those, supported those sanctions. So this is what the Chinese game plan has been in the energy sector. China imports about 80 million tons of LNG, liquid natural gas, but this mainly comes from Australia. There is the Qatar, which contributes about 24%, but that is now also affected due to the Strait of Hormuz being shut down. It is estimated that there are about 160 Chinese vessels stranded, but some of these were escorted by the PLA Navy escort forces. To recall, since 2008, China had sent 46 naval escorts to the Indian Ocean to counter piracy. But according to the International Maritime Organization, Indian Ocean piracy has come down. Still, China sends these ships every year, uh, 4 or 5 contingencies a year on an average, about 46 so far. And these are uh, providing China with the wherewithal in countering the, coming to the West Asian region. In the China also have Djibouti naval base since 2015, and so it is refurbishing these recently with a submarine base, construction of which has reportedly begun. So, in other words, China has been making a lot of efforts and following Sun Tzu's strategy of increasing the cost for the adversaries so that it doesn't have to face the problems in direct confrontation. So here what China did is to counter the United States and Israel by supporting, providing diplomatic and other material assistance to Iran surreptitiously. This is what we come to know. China also has a strategic oil reserve, but the oil prices in Russia, in China, have also increased nearly by 1/4 price. So it indicates that despite the 100-day strategic reserve that China has, it is also under stress recently due to the inadequacies of the strategic oil reserves. 23% domestic oil prices increase has been there in China. So I just want to mention here that China has been preparing for long. They cobbled up the Saudi-Iran, in other words, Shia-Sunni kind of truce between Saudi Arabia and Iran some 4 years ago, with the anticipation of a change in the West Asian order. And given the gradual withdrawal of the United States at that time because of the shale gas revolution. And so China has been preparing for this event at least 4 or 5 years before. And so we see the stalemate or even an advantage for Iran in terms of the showdown with US and Israel. So this is one aspect that I wanted to highlight. This is what the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017 mentioned about profound changes in the international system, unseen in a century. Now, China has been preparing for this, for the profound changes, in order to position itself and become the global hegemon. Chinese assessments are that US is a declining power. And we saw, for instance, the Iran conflict led to 70% of the Tomahawks being used, and also depletion in ammunition and other logistics for the United States. So this is what the Chinese call as weakening of the United States. We did see that NATO has declined given the US-NATO relations in the last 2 years. And the NATO powers have not allowed the US assets to be used in the Iran conflict. Spain, Italy, and others specifically, which suggests that Chinese assessment needs to be further explored on the weakening of the alliances, number one. Number two, we also saw recently, 2 weeks ago, the Indo-Pacific Command has been renamed, and there is the President Trump not coming for the Quad meeting, which was supposed to be held last year, even though the Quad foreign ministerial meeting took place in Delhi, but we have not seen the summit meeting. So the signaling from China on the profound changes unseen in a century that we need to examine further. A second aspect of the Communist Party Congress in 2017 mentioned about the occupying the center stage. General Secretary Xi Jinping mentioned about occupying the center stage, which basically meant that China wants to now look for the leading position in global and regional affairs. At the regional level, West Asian regional level, China's jockeying is quite clear from the last 100 days of maneuvering in West Asia. Arms, energy, yuan transactions, renminbi transactions, and other features, the CIPS, cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, has been active, and China is pushing for a de-dollarization. So if you suggest that US power is based on the military budget and the spectacular nature of the military, which has seen some denting during the West Asian conflict. Second, its military industrial capacity, which also saw some denting during the Iran conflict. Third, when we look at the US dollar position, there is, of course, no denting in this so far, but China is trying with the CIPS and de-dollarization. So, and there is also the technological edge that since Henry Kissinger's time, the United States helped China rise with 77,000 companies investing in China market and $700 billion and signaling the Wall Street to help China rise. Now, today we are in an inflection point on this. The Busan meeting between President Trump and President Xi, as well as their meeting in Beijing last month, suggests that China's assessments we need to closely monitor in terms of that profound changes unseen in a century. And there is a nudge that China has done in regard to the so-called United States decline. I think there is no major decline of the United States, yet this is the buzzword in China, and they are preparing for that kind of a power transition. So we see that China is preparing for the long term, and West Asia is one element in this transition. And at the moment, in relation to West Asia, we see that there is a stalemate between US and Iran. And we need to be prepared for a long-term stalemate, which also means bad news for the global community on those three issues: food, fertilizer, and uh, fuel prices, even though they are coming back to the normalcy in terms of price rise. But that is what I would try to suggest. Uh, um, the last point that I want to make in this part of the discussion is China has three magic weapons. Mao Zedong used to say one is the Leninist centralized Communist Party, which was established in 1921 and saw several maneuverings till 1949. The second magic weapon is the PLA. I just mentioned about the dual use technologies and other supply to Iran. So it is through the uh, power flows from the barrel of the gun. That was the slogan that they mentioned during those days. The third magic weapon, and this is also extensively applied in the West Asian conflict, is the United Front. Um, China has this United Front tactics, um, learning from its lessons with the Kuomintang United Front. Um, Please also remember that China invited the Kuomintang president recently to China in order to counter the DPP, which is the ruling party in Taiwan. So United Front is applied in China's foreign policy and generally to most countries and also in Iran. However, the litmus test for China would be those $400 billion trade with West Asia. If it is willing to give up those trade with West Asia in lieu of its support to Iran. And so that is where Chinese diplomacy is quite active. The 4-point proposal, the 5-point proposal, along with Pakistan, should be seen in this. When you look at these 4-point, 5-point, these are very anodyne. And Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently came to New Delhi, and he also suggested 4 lessons of the US-Iran conflict. He said upholding international rules, respecting national sovereignty, establishing a new security concept, and grasping new forms of warfare. Um, Now, these are anodyne because when China says we should respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity, India had just gone through a 5-year ordeal on Galwan, and China refuses um, to introduce de-escalation and de-induction. And they mention about international rules, etc. China had signed several CBM's agreements with India, which it violated during the Galwan crisis. So most of these points remain anodyne. But what is clear is that United Front tactics is applied to West Asia. I will not be surprised if Saudi Arabia, UAE, despite the losses, will go back to China because of the capacity buildup that the Chinese have done in manufacturing and others. So there is clearly a lesson here in terms of the Chinese interactions with the West Asian region. I want to stop here and spend more time in terms of the discussion. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Dr. Adityanji.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Kondapalli, for a very detailed lecture on China's geopolitical maneuvering regarding the West Asia war. Before I open it to questions from the audience, I have a couple of questions of mine just to seek some clarification because of your expertise in Mandarin. You have been reading the primary sources rather than the English translations of reportage. So before the Trump-Xi summit in Beijing, I think 3 or 4 days before that, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi actually went to Beijing. And I would like to know from you, after your review of the Mandarin language, media, what was the content of that visit? Was it to prime Xi Jinping in resisting Trump, or what was the idea behind that particular visit?
Thank you very much for that question. It is still classified, the exact discussion. Again, some anodyne statements were provided by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in relation to the Iranian foreign minister's visit. Just to put it in context, the Iranian foreign minister visited Russia. He visited Beijing. He also came to Delhi for the BRICS foreign ministerial meeting. And he did make some statements regarding the Chabahar and other. The Beijing visit, it is still not clear what the announcements and deals between them. But what is clear from the writings, blogs in Chinese social networking sites is that there is the pressure and diplomatic assurance from China regarding the number one, the negotiations. I mentioned before Xi Jinping's 4-point proposal, and Ishaq Dar, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan, also visited China, and in his 5-point proposal, there is also the sovereignty, territorial integrity, negotiations, not war. All these were also mentioned. So what I gather from these is nothing different from what the 4-point proposal and the 5-point proposal were mentioned. So the visit on May 6th by the Iranian foreign minister to Beijing was, of course, they discussed the West Asia conflict. There is also the um, Chinese proposal for normal and safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. So that is the most fundamental aspect that China is insisting on. I just explained the context on Strait of Hormuz because one of the major losers is China. Both energy and merchandise will be stopped with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down. There is also some reports that Israel bombed the China-Iran railway line, some portions of these at least. So the damage for China is very high. And so first point that the Chinese raised is Strait of Hormuz. What we hear now is selective passage through the Strait of Hormuz, through the PLA Navy escorts. So this is number one deal between Iran and China during Araghchi's visit to Beijing. The second is they discussed the diplomatic strategy in terms of the how to address the United States and Israel in the upcoming negotiations. Third is in terms of the sanctions on Iran and how these can be overcome. So what I gather is these three main points, but the fundamentally is Strait of Hormuz to be opened up or selectively opened up for China. And so that is important. Yeah.
My second question to you, sir, is again during Trump-Xi summit meeting, there was a mention from Chinese side, especially from General Secretary Xi, about how US avoids the Thucydides trap. And that was very unusual from the head of state telling the president of the reigning superpower or reigning hegemon that you need to be very careful about avoiding the Thucydides trap. And from US side, President Trump almost de facto endorsing G2. I would like to know your comments on that kind of issue.
Well, Thucydides trap was mentioned by Graham Allison. And last 1 year, Allison visited China several times. And he was exposed to several public meetings organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or its think tanks. So China has been making some preparation in regard to what Xi Jinping is going to mention in the summit level meetings with the US president. So that's number one. China has done some homework in relation to the Thucydides trap. This was mentioned by President Xi Jinping during his visits to the United States some 10 years ago. So there is a long preparation in relation to the Thucydides trap. So the general aspect is that a rising country and a dominant power, they have this security dilemma, and the rising country would try to outmaneuver the dominant power. And so Athens and Sparta have been mentioned in the history of the Peloponnesian War. And so this is the context for the Thucydides trap. But this has also been legitimized by the Chinese leaders, specifically mentioning about this trap. So that is the background. Foreign Minister Wang Yi mentioned this several times with Brookings Institution and with other think tanks in the United States and also with the US leaders. So there is the legitimacy provided by the Chinese leaders, both president and the foreign minister. So we see there is some preparation in this regard. The third aspect is that when this issue was raised, of course, we saw the Iran conflict, how United States was desperate to get a deal. And before that, Trump mentioned very explicitly that G2 has come into being. Now, the word G2 was first mentioned by Brzezinski and then by President Obama during his visit to China in 2009. And the joint statement between Obama and Hu Jintao in 2009 obliquely mentions G2, not very explicitly, because then Premier Wen Jiabao did not like the word G2, because China's ambitions is to become the global leader, not G2, not sharing power with the United States. And the 19th Communist Party Congress confirms that China wants to be the leader rather than playing second fiddle to the United States. So during the Obama-Hu Jintao joint declaration, it was mentioned that the United States and China will take care of the South Asian security as part of the G2. G2 as such was not mentioned, but the wording is such that it is G2. So in other words, since 2009, there has been an effort to implement G2. And quite explicitly, last month in May, President Trump mentioned in his Truth Social about the G2. So here is the United States, which is trying to popularize, legitimize the China rise, which it itself has helped make up. And today, the United States is facing problems in relation to the China rise, as we saw in the West Asian conflict or in Taiwan Straits, South China Sea, East Sea, etc. So this is the context for the Thucydides trap. So um, in that background, by suggesting that the Thucydides trap needs to be addressed, it indicates that China is exerting psychological pressure on the United States uh, by this concept.
Thank you, sir. There's a question from Dr. Umesh Kumar Gupta, and I'll read. I would like to know what are the implications of China's growing involvement in West Asia for India's strategic interests, maritime security, and regional diplomacy.
A few things. One, India is mainly concerned with the 10 million Indian expatriates who contribute roughly about $130 billion as part of the repatriation of their savings. Kerala alone receives about $37 billion a year and contributes substantially to the Indian economy. So the West Asian conflict, number one, will be bad news if there is any reduction or any disturbance to this savings being sent to India. That's number one. Number two is energy security. So we need to see how much this will have a pressure on the retail sales and others in the energy consumption. We already have 4 times increase in oil prices in Indian market. So that is exerting some pressure at the inflation as well as the middle class and others budgetary issues. So that is number two impact due to the West Asian conflict. Number three is in relation to the regional security. As you know that the Chabahar port was constructed by Indian assistance. $645 million assistance was provided. It appears that India had given up the Chabahar, which also means the INSTC, International North-South Transport Corridor, which has these um, infrastructure up to St. Petersburg through Afghanistan, Central Asia, Eurasia, and others. So it is at the moment bad news for India in terms of the Chabahar. The other aspect is at the G20 meeting in New Delhi, there was the IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to Italy, there was a suggestion to revive the IMEC project. And there is the Saudi Arabia and UAE. The Prime Minister also had gone to UAE, and part of the discussion was related to the IMEC. But with conflict um, continuing, despite the MOU, we see that the IMEC has not really taken off. And so if India wants to become the third largest, second largest GDP in the world, it has to look for alternative ways of uh, infrastructure development and exports. This year, India intends to increase its exports to 1 trillion despite the West Asian conflict. So despite the 50% tariffs by the Trump administration. And so the FTAs with UAE, with uh, Europe, the trade agreements with Australia, New Zealand, and the other agreements with UK and so on, which has just commenced. So India needs to raise the bar and increase the infrastructure spending infrastructure construction in order to elevate its own growth rates and also contribute to the global economic interdependence. So IMEC is crucial for this project. And so this would be also affected if we do not have security and stability in West Asia. These are quick points that come to me immediately, but there are others as well.
There's a question from Mr. Ankush Bhandari that as a result of this West Asia war, will there be a paradigm shift in West Asia, especially Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar? Will they show certain shift towards Russia-China axis instead of US?
We need to watch the emerging regional order. At the moment, it appears Russia, China, Iran, and the alliances are still intact, although there are murmurs and permutations and combinations happening within the region. Especially the Saudi leaders have expressed some concerns. UAE also has been suggesting two alternative ways. So here is the regional order. Some new elements are emerging. There is the Israel factor, there is the Palestinian factor, there is the energy factor. There are many factors which would suggest that it is still an emerging situation. And so it is difficult to see if Russia, China will be able to have an upper hand in the region because of the contradictory nature of their policies. For example, China has an issue with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, and while China received a lot of support, 56 Islamic countries have supported China's position on European sanctions on Xinjiang due to the repression there. Nevertheless, there is an undercurrent. For example, even Jamaat-e-Islami in Pakistan had demonstrated against the situation in Xinjiang. Likewise, people in Afghanistan, despite what we see between the Taliban and China, there is the undercurrent here, the street protests on China's record in Xinjiang. So this is one key problem in China's approach to West Asia. And if the news about the situation in Xinjiang spreads to the West Asian region, it is very unlikely that China will have an upper hand in West Asia. The most fundamental aspect for West Asia is the Fifth Fleet. And at the moment, there is no depletion in the Fifth Fleet, some cosmetic depletion. The most crucial thing is if China does not propose its own Fifth Fleet for West Asia, this will remain only claptrap. China's position in West Asia would be weaker if it doesn't have a Fifth Fleet in the West Asian region. China has a naval base in Djibouti. China had conducted several exercises with several countries, but it is here and nowhere. Ultimately, are you providing me security or not? The claptrap, no one is going to listen unless until I am provided with security. Now, China is not in a position to do that. Russia is not in a position to do that because of the Ukrainian conflict. So, in other words, we are back to square one. If China provides assistance or dominates the regional order in West Asia. The most crucial question each of the West Asian leaders will ask is, can you provide protection for me? Or who will provide protection for me?
I think very elaborate answer. Before we try to wind this down, I see in the audience there is Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. Ambassador Kapoor, do you have any question for Professor Srikanth Kondapalli? Looks like he left. So I think we will end the discussion now. We are already over our time. So my heartful thanks to Professor Kondapalli for very detailed, very informative lecture on the current situation in West Asia and China's geopolitical maneuvering, because China is probably going to use it for its own
Yeah, sorry,
purposes.
I got dropped for a minute by mistake. I have a comment indeed, but first of all, I want to express very profound appreciation to Professor Srikanth Kondapalli for such a brilliant and outstanding expose and such thorough work to highlight all the important issues. To make anybody understand what the situation is there today, how it is evolving, what has happened. A lot of facts which are not in the public domain you have brought out, sir. Thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. You've done a phenomenal job. It's been very learning experience, very lucid talk, and absolutely outstanding. What I want to find out is the scenarios. You have said very correctly that it'll be a lingering stalemate. I agree with that. That both the sides are going to keep it at a very low level of, agreement or hostility or whatever you want to call it. But what happens after November? Because the game plan, in my opinion, for the US administration is to make sure that they do not have any significant disruptions in that situation till November, till the elections are held. In case the Republicans come back, in case Trump is able to survive the November elections, then what happens? Or otherwise, if the Trump administration and the Republicans face a massive defeat, then what happens? Because either way, it's going to be very critical. That is my first question. Secondly, in view of the US, the India-Iran position very specifically, just focusing on that. Iran may have made some noises. Iran and India have been talking. There's a lot of things being said on that front. But in the UN, for example, Iran has always voted against India. Now, in favor of Pakistan, for example, on Kashmir. Now, how do you see that playing out in terms of India's own geostrategic interests? Over to you, Professor Kondapalli.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kapoor. I think those are very encouraging, and thank you very much. On the first issue on November elections, the scenarios are that, as you rightly mentioned, sir, the Democrats, if they come back in the elections, that would constrain the Trump administration policies. But what I would like to mention is, despite the inflation and each household spending $300 more, estimated due to this Iran conflict background, the American households. So despite that, we see that there is the costs of war have been covered, the $29 billion. And there is the additional funding from the US Congress, $200 billion promised. And if the conflict, renews. So there is that issue. And so it is problematic for the Trump administration from the domestic, the inflation, economic hardships, etc. But what I want to highlight here is United States has the structural power. It has substantial leverages all across the globe. And so we probably will see these exercised in the near future. There is a stalemate, of course, but there is enough time. 60 days has been mentioned as part of the negotiations, etc., the MOU, etc. So there is time for this to kind of arrive at. Of course, Iranians, Russians, Chinese would probably see that the costs for the United States are higher, and so there is the issue here on um, on the domestic factor, domestic political factor in the US. Um, it is still not clear, sir, because at the moment the polls suggest to some pressure on the Trump administration. But there could also be rebounding of that if there is peace talks succeed in one form or the other. Luckily for the US, while the US want the Strait of Hormuz to be opened up, US is not completely dependent on the Strait of Hormuz for the energy. Today, actually, the United States is exporting substantial energy resources. Venezuelan oil is flowing. There is the fracking in the US also contributing to the US energy output. So the fundamentals are still quite an advantage to the United States. So I do not see massive impact because of this Iranian conflict. So that is one. I'm trying to put my head on the block and say this, but I think the structural power of the United States would be at play by pulling levers from all across economy, technology, military, all those levers in the next few months. So I think that is likely to happen. On the India-Iran, so what we saw, despite a lot of people saying, look, Pakistan is on the upper edge because it is offering its services in mediation. But I think the situation is such a I mean, there are so many things happening simultaneously. And while on the one hand, you have an MOU, an understanding, on the other hand, the conflict has already resumed in the Strait of Hormuz. So there is so much of uncertainty of the situation. So what India did smartly was, with its neutrality, what it did was not to burn its fingers in the whole conflict, and looked at its national interests, that is the diaspora, energy security. India is now importing from 36 countries. So redundancies have been increased in terms of the Strait of Hormuz. It did affect the Indian energy imports, but we were kind of cushioned with these alternative supply lines and so on. When you look at the global oil prices, India still did better compared to Pakistan, compared to Malaysia, compared to China, Japan, many other countries.
USA also.
United States as well. So I think it is it's a smart move of not getting involved in the negotiations or otherwise, and contributing to this way or that way of the conflict. But India has also urged for dialogue, and so it has repositioned with countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, which are actually more powerful in West Asian context. And so I think India played a smart role uh, in the entire situation. Energy, diaspora, diplomatic balancing, I think um, those are some of the projects that India had done in relation to the Iran conflict.
Thank you, Professor Kondapalli. We are 15 minutes above our time, so I would like to end the discussion with my profuse thanks, heartfelt thanks to Professor Kondapalli, to all our audience members, and Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. I am also thankful to Team CSA, who work behind the scenes, Mr. Rajiv Verma, Mr. Ripudaman Pachori, who helped me make these kind of presentations possible. One last comment I will make as the moderator and the chair of this session, something we did not discuss, but probably is slightly peripheral, that as a result of this, India and Oman have decided to have an underwater, undersea pipeline for transmission of oil and gas. So that is something, has been in discussion. There was India-Iran pipeline under sea, which Iran had ruled out. So with Oman agreeing to it, I think that is a good sign for India's energy security. So thank you very much, everyone. We will have the recording of this session available within next 24 hours on our YouTube channel, as well as on our website. And with again, my thanks from the bottom of my heart for this scholarly presentation to Professor Kondapalli. Thank you very much indeed.